you say earlier, Karen, for the P&Ls are next week.
Oh, they are?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Sorry, I jumped the gun a
No,
little
you're
bit.
fine. No, but
Sorry.
this is still, pricing is still important. Pricing is still important, but you're good.
Okay. So we are recording. Pedro, you are on, my friend.
Awesome. Okay. I wish you guys could see my what I see on my end here. I have 3 monitors. I have a laptop, another screen, an iPad, my phone, and they all just have different screens and they're all just doing different things. So sometimes I look like deer in headlights and I feel so bad because I'm like, give me one sec, guys. And you guys are probably like, what the hell is going on with this kid? Like I'm just trying to get all the things in order. There's a lot happening. But
Yeah, you're like the genius behind the motherboard. Like you got all the stuff going. You're about to drop some knowledge on us today. Let's go.
All right. The new rules for, I'm not sure what you're referring to, Antonio.
Oh, look at that.
Hi, so I seen something that came across
Really
the
flexible and
news.
creative was really essential
And
to what I wanted to make.
maybe-
And find that.
10, making a change in the name of.
Wait, can you mute,
There are
JC?
new reporting requirements this year for Arizona.
JC, can you mute? Oh, thanks. Go ahead, Antonio.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I just seen a news article, a news story that came across Arizona News that was highlighting some new rules that will go into effect for new business owners. And I just was wondering, could some clarity just briefly outline what that might look like potentially for maybe some of us, or just overall in general that we may need to know?
Yeah, let us look at this really quick. Or Pedro, Pedro, how do you want to handle it?
I mean, I'm not sure what it is. What we can do, Antonio, I can take a look at this towards the end, and then see what it is about. I'm not really sure what the new rules are. Other than, do you mean like the BOI?
I can't be any more specific other than the bullet points that the story had aired on, and so that's why I was just bringing it to you all attention. Maybe someone can help me to better understand like what they were referring to. I tried to include the news, the link that I seen the story on, so hopefully that might be able to help out if it can be reviewed. It's not urgent or anything, but just something that maybe I was hoping we can discuss. Maybe, like you said, at the end of class or next week.
Okay, so the Corporate Transparency Act, I can look into it. I know there are some new things that came out. I'm not sure if this is specifically tying it back to the BOI, which is something that you would have to file if you are a new business, but let me look at it to see if it's the same thing, and then that way I can kind of guide you in the best direction. Okay. Oh, Manny just joined. Manny, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Antonio had put in the chat, there was there were some new laws taking into effect in Arizona for small businesses. I believe it has to do with the Corporate Transparency Act, but I wasn't sure if that was tied back to the BOI that they need to file.
Yes, it is.
I'm not sure if it is. Okay. So then, yes, to answer your question, Antonio, if you are a new business, you do have to file. It's very easy to do. There is a link that you go to, and basically all you're doing is inputting, if you are the owner, if there are any other owners, your business information, kind of like when you register with the Arizona Corporate Commission. It's basically the same thing. They're just wanting to make sure that there aren't any other parties involved and all that stuff. It's really geared towards trying to find like tax fraud and things like that towards bigger companies. So if you're a smaller business or a smaller company, it's pretty easy to fill out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And Antonio, I'll send you more info on that as well. And then if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and we can connect on that. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. All righty. So today we are going to be talking about pricing. All right. This is where we are going to discuss how you price things, why you price things the way you do. But before we get into that, we have done now class 1 and 2. We are doing class 3, and next week is going to be understanding your numbers. So we'll be looking at the P&Ls, the profit and loss, really trying to gather all of the details that are needed. If you guys can just give me 1 second. All right, sorry about that, guys. So a couple announcements before we continue. So we are halfway through the classes after today, right, out of the 6. So yay, thank you guys all for committing and staying with it. At the end of it, as I keep saying, we will have a small celebration to celebrate, you know, your accomplishment in going through the classes. The other thing I wanted to ask you guys is, has anybody filed recently their LLC? Maybe, yes, no? Jessica?
Yes.
Okay, you have, okay. And for those of you that have not filed an LLC, where do you file your LLC?
AZ Corporation Commission.
Yes, correct. All right, what about your EIN? Jessica, where do you file your EIN?
At the IRS.
Yes. And is there a fee for an EIN?
No.
There is not. Is there a fee for an LLC?
Yes.
There is, and it is $85. So again, if you ever hear anybody say, I can file this for you and it's going to be $1,500 or whatever it is, run away. If they're trying to charge you, or you see somebody doing this, right? For an EIN as well, EINs are completely free. There's no need to actually pay for them. So some of you know, if not all of you, that there are scholarships that you can apply for. You would reach out to the ASBA team. That would be Hannah, I believe. Karen, if you don't mind putting Hannah's email into the chat. But with that scholarship, I know some of you have been asking, you know, if LCG does provide certain services and all of that, and we do. So part of that, you can use that scholarship to, you know, to get some of these services. So if you're needing a business plan created, if you're needing any other sort of documents or any plans or whatever it is, you know, marketing, whatever, you can use those funds from the ASBA scholarship to pay for the services through LCG. Then just so that you know, we do have a 30-minute free session. So, you know, that's where we're going to get to know more about what it is that you're wanting to do, see what you have, what you don't. Really, it's just a discovery. So that's 30 minutes. There's no cost to that. And then on top of that, you then also will get a discount for that hourly. So it's 25% off of the hourly, but you can definitely use the scholarship to get those services. So yeah, there it is. Karen put her email in there. It's for Hannah. It's goprogram@asba.com. Okay. All right, so let's get into price. So what is something that you will spend your money on, even if the price goes up? So I want to hear from some of you guys. What's something that no matter if the price increases, you're going to keep paying for it?
Gas.
Water. Water, okay.
Gas.
Gas.
Power. Yeah.
Power, okay.
Fruits and vegetables.
Fruits and vegetables. Water, I see water, okay. So one of the things, right, and those are all great. Those are all fabulous. But one of the things is, for example, if my barber charges, $20 and time, my barber charges $20, and he now says, hey, you know what? I'm going to actually be increasing the price to $40. Well, for me, that's something that I'm going to continue to spend money on, right? Because I see that there is a value there. So I think his haircuts are good. I can't cut my hair. I tried during COVID and I looked like, has anybody ever seen the Rugrats where that little ugly doll has like a piece of hair sticking out right here and she's kind of bald on one side? That was me during COVID because I bought clippers and I thought I could be a barber, right? So now if my barber says I'm going to increase the price, well, I'm going to just continue to pay somebody to do that, right? So again, it's what's the value? Did you take a baking for like 3 seconds, Jason, just for 3 seconds, and then I gave it up really quick. But again, it goes back to value, right? What is the value there that they are providing? Can they justify that price increase? So who sets your prices? So what do you guys think? Who actually sets your prices? Is it one of these? Is it, go ahead, Dylan.
I think a lot has to do with your competition.
Okay. Jason, me in the market. Okay. Joanna, go ahead, you raise your hand.
I mean, it should be set by you and the needs of the business.
Okay. So
I tried
you
to
guys
set
are-
it by the needs of the market, and that blew up in my face.
Oh, you said you tried doing it by the market and it blew up in your face?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Do you mind telling me a little bit about that? Like what was it that happened based off of the market?
When I started my business, I thought I was in competition with other salons that did kids' hair. I was actually my own niche concept. So what I should have done was priced it as a niche concept thing instead of I priced myself lower than a kid's haircut, when what I was doing was kids for like haircuts for special needs individuals or autistic individuals. So it was a very niche market, and I ended at the end. I was charging $40, but at that point, their haircuts were taking an hour. There was no money to be made.
Yeah. So okay. So let's take that, right? Because that's actually really important. And let's talk about when you have something that is very specific, like a niche that is something that only you do. There are other, not a lot, but there are other competitors, whether they are in your immediate area or outside of that immediate area. And if it's something so specialized, yes, you still want to look at, and I'll just use this for an example, Joanna, like Great Clips, right? You'll still look at them and say, okay, this is kind of what they do based off of the foundation and that structure that they have. But when you have something so niche, you definitely want to look at what others within that niche market are doing, right? Even if they aren't in your immediate area, because it's so specialized. So you're right. you kind of want to look at and reflect it back to you. You still, though, want to still look at your competition. And again, your competition may not be that's right there within that immediate area, but because they're so niche, maybe, in a town over or wherever over, there might be something similar. And then you can use that to kind of gauge it with the other information that you have, right? So thank
And
you
that's
for sharing
very,
that.
We ended up with, I have a whole thing where we know everybody across the United States that now actually offers this service, and we all discuss it back and forth, and the prices kind of fluctuate with that. But there's, it's a lot of heart in that business, not a lot of money.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But thank you for sharing that, because I think that's important to also know. So when in general, right, when we're looking at setting our prices, of course the customers are important, right? When you think of customers, it's like, okay, well, I kind of need them to buy stuff, right? And so if the price is just not vibing with them, then the reality is that I need to adjust that, right? So yeah, the customers have a say in where you price yourself. You, the owner, of course, also, right, have a say, because you physically can make the decision to price something wherever it is you want to price it. So if you want to go and you want to say, you know what, a cup of water or a water bottle at my place, for example, is going to be $1,100.50, you can, right? You're the owner. Now, I definitely would not recommend that, because I don't know who's paying that much for water. But maybe sometime in the future, who knows, right? There'll be a need for you to raise it that much. But at the moment, that's not something you would want to do. But you do have the option, right, to set those prices. Then you have your investors. So your investors obviously play a role, if you have investors, into your business. Why? Because they are part owner. So they're going to want to make sure that based off of their numbers and their goals, that you're pricing yourself correctly so that they can get their money back, right? If you say, I want to price myself at X amount of dollars, and they disagree, well, if they have a large stake in it, they can tell you no, because they want to guarantee that they're going to get their money back. And then, of course, there is the competition. Out of all of this, you do want to take all this into consideration, but the one that has the biggest say out of all of this is your competition, right? So if you're doing something that's very similar to someone else in your area, in your city, or whatever it is, that's really going to dictate how much or how little you actually charge, right? If your competitor is charging, $1 less, but the value is complete garbage, well, maybe you can charge a little more because you provide better quality, and you can justify that, right? And that's kind of how you're going to look at that. But overall, your competitor, along with everything else, your competition is going to have the biggest say. Any questions? Okay. We talked about this last week. Sell your benefits, not the features, right? So the features are fabulous, they're great, but you want to sell the benefit, because the benefit is what's going to get the customer to feel like they're getting something out of it. Oh, this is making my life easier. This actually is going to do XYZ for me, right? So sell the benefit, not the feature. Now, again, pricing is dependent upon the value that you've given it. Now, the value that you've given it is based off of the perception that you've given it. So in this image, there's tomatoes for 45 cents a pound. Then there's tomatoes for 65 cents a pound. Same exact tomatoes, right? They're both red. They both came from the same place, but they're spelled differently, and they have a little bit more of a nicer ring when you say it. Tomatoes, tomatoes, right? So they can charge more for that because the perception is that they are fancier. The perception is that, well, only fancy people or people of a certain class are buying these, so I want those tomatoes, right? All without knowing that it's the same freaking tomato. So your pricing depends on your perception. And it's not part of this class. There's another workshop where we talk about marketing in depth and we talk about logos and branding and all of that. And that also plays a part into your pricing. If you have strong branding, if you have a strong logo, if your overall is really strong and conveys a very polished and strong message, that also plays a role in your pricing as well, right? So again, keep that in mind. Pricing depends on perception. If you want somebody to think of you or think of your business at this level, then that's what you need to convey through your marketing, through, you know, your services and all of the value that you're bringing. Any questions? Okay. So why do we pay, the consumer, all of us, why do we pay money for things in general? So convenience, right? At sporting events, if you guys are sports fans, or even if you go to a concert or whatever it is, how much, can anybody tell me, how much is a bottle of water at like a sporting event or
Like $10.
6 to 8 bucks.
right, right? And then, and I mean, that's pretty expensive for a bottle of water to begin with, right? I've gone to, I don't know about where you guys have been. I went to a concert recently where the water was $16, right? And it was like, do I really want this water? Bougie. And I was like, do I really want this water? And I was like, well, yeah, I kind of do, because I don't want to go anywhere else because it's too far of a walk to go get it, right? You have to leave the venue. You have to go somewhere to get water. And when you think about it, you'll actually spend more time and money trying to get to that place that sells it for less than just paying for it there. But the point is we pay because of convenience. It's there, it's easy. And we think about it later. Convenience stores, right? At some point or another, we've all lived around, if we don't already, around a place that has a convenience store, either down the road or around the block or right next to us. Why do we go to the convenience store instead of going to, let's say, Fry's Food? If we only need 1 gallon of a gallon of milk, for example, and that's all we need, well, we're going to go to the convenience store and pay the $4 or $5 or whatever the markup is there, because it's right there, instead of having to get in your car and drive out 15 minutes to go to Fry's Food, right? Convenience, time, correct. So the perceived value, right? So again, it's what people think it is, right? Can go up or down. So we all know the dollar store. The dollar store actually right now is going out of business. Well, not the dollar store, the 99-cent store is going out of business. And I think the dollar store is next on its way out. But why is that, right? Everybody has this perceived, Dollar Tree is the 123 store, 125, yeah. So there's this thing associated with the dollar store, the 99-cent store. You can get a lot of things in there, well, before the increases, for $1, right? That's kind of what you go in there, you buy a couple things, it's only $1. And so the perceived value or the notion was you can go in and you can get all of these things for really, really cheap. Now that had a negative impact because now they're actually not able to keep up with that and they're closing their stores. But the other thing is you associate the value there with cheap items because of them being priced at $1. So what was it that they did? They then said, okay, well, instead of giving you guys cheap items, we're actually going to put some name brand things in there, right? So when you go in, they have like name brand breakfast items, and they have like Hot Pockets, and they have all of these things, but they can no longer sell these things for 99 cents. So they have to increase the value. Well, people aren't going to really go and pay for that. And it just doesn't do well for the business. So now they're closing, right? Then you have things like Walmart and Target. They're kind of there, but the perceived value is that Target is more luxury, right? When you walk into Target, there's like these LED lights, there's a nice little Starbucks, they have like a floral area where you can like buy flowers, and like all the carts are like nice and whatever. And when you ask, this is a big one, at least for me, when you ask for help at Target, they actually help you. They're like, oh yeah, let me grab that for you. Whereas Walmart, maybe not so much, right? They're kind of like, you can get that yourself. And that's happened to me. I was buying this big TV, and I was like, hey, I kind of need that. And they're like, yeah, you can go get a cart. And I was like, okay, sure. All right, whatever then. So, right, perceived value, right? The other thing, sales and holidays. We've all seen this. Black Friday is a big one. We see all these sales for Black Friday. Oh, all these sales, and you're gonna miss out, and you have to go, and you have to go. But then you go, and you notice that the sale really is no different than the normal sale, right? It's kind of all priced the same. But what they make you think is you are going to miss out if you actually don't buy something right now, right? So throughout the entire year, they're, for example, Macy's, they're throwing out sales. They're throwing out sales, Memorial Day sale, 5-for-1 sale, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, well, I kind of need to buy this. Well, I'm not sure. And you go back and forth. You get to Black Friday, same thing, right? You're like, oh, I need to buy this, but it's the same thing that was on sale months ago. So they just kind of keep you in this rotation of like buying stuff because it's like FOMO. It's just like fear of missing out, right? Yeah, you just said it, Joanna. They create FOMO. Yes, literally. Which is why I stay out of the stores now, because I would go into the stores and I'm like, oh, look at this, it's on sale. I need it now. And literally 2 months later, it would be the same exact thing at the same price. I'm like, I could have just waited. Go ahead, Joanna.
You froze.
Oh no, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay. So I wanted to ask, do you think that the Shein and Temu of it all had the effect on the Dollar Tree and the 99-cent store as people fill their carts with 33-cent items?
I don't think so. I wouldn't say so. No, I don't think that really had anything to.
All right.
I didn't think so, but
Okay. Just curious.
yeah, no,
Stealing?
go ahead.
I'm sorry, you said the stealing of the items or the pricing?
I was saying like Shein, the website Shein or Temu, which all the young
I
people
heard
are
that
on.
they lost so much money from people stealing that they just couldn't go like a Dollar Tree. When people steal, I
Stealing
know
from
people-
Dollar Tree. Sorry.
But so I know people that work at the Dollar Tree, and when you steal from the Dollar Tree, they cut employees' hours to make up for what's lost.
Oh wow.
People steal all the time for the Dollar Tree. It's pretty crazy. Like a bad
Wow.
academic here in Tucson.
Karen, Gen Z does not like fast fashion. No, they don't, because it's unethical. Fast fashion is unethical, and that's a completely different conversation that I could just spiral on. So, so we'll move on from there. But to continue, kids eating for free. We've all know Denny's has kids eat for free, right? You bring your kids, but why do they do that? Because they make you feel like you're getting a bargain because your kids eat for free. The reality is that your kids or the kids you bring do not eat for free. Why? Because the adults are going to come in and the adults are going to spend X amount of dollars, right? And so that X amount of dollars is going to essentially cover that small child's plate, right? That small child's plate is basically nothing because they eat less, so there's less food on there, right? So to them, it's something where they're telling you or making you believe, hey, bring your kids, the whole family can come and all your kids will eat for free, but the adults are probably going to spend quite a bit of money there combined, right? A good 50, 60 plus dollars if there's a lot of people. So yes, they eat for free, but really you've kind of paid for it already. The other reason why we pay is no competitors, the first to the market, right? So this is kind of like Joanna with the niche, right, that we were talking about. Being first to the market, just so that we're all kind of on the same page, doesn't mean the first to the market with a brand new idea or a brand new concept or kind of reinventing the wheel. That could be it. But being first to the market also means just being the first one in your actual area, right? So if there's two of us, let's say me and Joanna, we're doing the same exact thing, right? And we're both kind of running against the clock here to kind of get our stuff out and going. She could be the first one in the Phoenix area, right? Even though I already exist, but I'm not in the Phoenix area, she could be the first one in the Phoenix area in that market to do her niche business, right? So again, it doesn't have to be I created a brand new thing or, you know, I recreated the wheel or reinvented the wheel. It could just be in that city or in that small area. So that's what it means. Okay, there's nobody there yet competing with you. And then ignorance. Okay, so before I get to this, don't actually raise your hand and do not tell me if yes or no. Keep this to yourselves. This is just so that we can all think about it. But if you know, or how, again, don't raise your hand, but how many of you know how to actually make allergy medicine, right? I don't know how to make allergy medicine. I take allergy medicine almost every day, right? And so part of that is, right, the ignorance, right? I don't know how to make allergy medicine. I don't know what the ingredients are. I don't know how I would put it together. So I, as somebody who takes allergy medicine almost every day, I am going to, you know, go ahead and pay for that. So I'm going to pay the 10 or the 12 or the $13 that it costs, because it's just insanely. Actually, I think it's more. I think it's like 20 something dollars for a bottle. So I am going to say, you know what? I need relief. These allergies are killing me. I'm going to pay for it. So part of it is ignorance, right? Same thing with a bottle of water, right? Do we know how to bottle and package water and put minerals back in it and decontaminate it? I mean, no, right? So we pay for water. We pay for water because, well, we're not going to do that, right? Let me see. I see the chat is sparkling up here. What's going on? Vitamin C is amazing allergy medicine. Oh, I didn't know that. Local bee pollen. Oh. What does local bee pollen do? You just take it and it helps with allergies?
Local bees, you know, obviously deal with the local flower of whatever. So if you take a teaspoon or a tablespoon, depending on how bad your allergies are, because they deal with the local flower, that will be introduced to your system. So instead of your system having a anaphylactic reaction to the pollen, it'll eventually stop looking at it like something attacking the system, and you'll stop having the reaction.
Interesting. Oh, I didn't know that. Very interesting. Okay, look at you guys educating me. I love it. Playing tricks on yourself. Yes. So again, sell the benefits, not the features. Just like the local honey, the pollen, the honey comment that was made. You just sold me the benefit, right? You just told me this is what you do because it's going to do X, Y, Z. Sell your benefits. All right. So price is the first step that we're going to talk about when it comes to value versus price. Okay. So to keep in mind, you can increase your price. Okay. That's perfectly fine to do, but only if the customer actually sees a substantial value in that cost. Okay. So again, we'll go back to the allergy medicine. We'll go back to the haircuts. They can increase the price because chances are I'm not going to cut my own hair anymore, and I just rather have somebody else do it. So yes, you can say it's going to be $40 now instead of the 20. I'm going to pay it. So you can increase your price. You just want to make sure that you've built value around that cost. So when we're talking luxury goods, right? Does anybody know what happens at the end of the year? Well, let me go back. Does anybody know what Louis Vuitton does at the end of the year with all of their bags that they didn't sell for the end of the year? Does anybody know? No? Clearance.
Donate to charity.
Ah, I wish. Awesome. That is correct, Amanda.
Profit and loss, right?
Louis Vuitton goes ahead and they do not go on clearance. They actually cut them up and they actually burn them at the end of the year, right? So I'm there with you. If they were on clearance or they went to charity, I would be standing outside with both my hands saying, please give me one. But no, they actually burn them, they cut them up, they destroy them. And that's just hundreds of thousands of dollars in the trash. Does anybody know why they actually do that?
Because if they put it on clearance or like gave it away or something like that, devalues it. You're not going to want it as much then. You wouldn't want it as much, Pedro. You would not want to be standing there going, no, you'd switch to just that Birkin and just hang out for that Birkin. Like, but
Yes. That is correct. That is correct. Exclusivity, right? So just so you guys know, if you didn't, a lot of these bags, when luxury goods, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, they make these bags for like hundreds of dollars. That's all they cost. It's just hundreds of dollars. That's it. Not saying that it's not a lot of money, but when you compare that, right? They have, if you know of it or if you've seen it, it's the bag that all the women wear. It's like it's called Neverall or whatever. It looks like a little tote. That bag only costs like $200-ish to make, and it's not even real leather, right? It's actually plastic, and it's glazed over. That bag costs almost $2,000, right? So what they would much rather do is make it for a couple hundred, then destroy it at the end of the year, because they would rather it stay exclusive, right? Because it makes you say, oh, I actually want that, right? And to your point, Joanna, yes, if everybody had it, then the value would drop from $2,000 all the way to $100 and something to $200 something, right? So what happens there? Now they're not really meeting those profit margins. They're not making that profit that they want to make because they're kind of selling it at the same price that they've made it. Okay. Convenience. So again, value versus price. Customer service. Think of places like Grubhub, DoorDash, Uber Eats, right? They're charging you, it's a customer service, a service that they're offering you, but it's for convenience. You don't have to leave your home. You don't have to, cook dinner. And so they bring it to you, and there you go, right? Yes, correct. Convenience is Grubhub. I apologize, but same thing with customer service, right? That kind of goes into that one. If the customer service is great, you can actually then charge more. So example with Grubhub, right? If they're doing what they're supposed to, if they bring it on time, if they're friendly, whatever it is, we've seen some horror stories with, Grubhub and all these places, but if they're actually performing that customer service, Grubhub can say, we actually do XYZ, we're going to, you know, charge you more for it. And then you have the added cost. So added costs are things like Netflix, right? So if you didn't know this, Netflix obviously has two types of packages. So they have the ones where you watch it with ads, right? Which is like cable, which don't get me started. That's ridiculous, isn't it? If I wanted cable, I'd just get cable, but you watch it with ads. Then they have the other package, which is you can watch it, but with no ads, right? So what they're saying is if you want to watch XYZ with no ads, that's fine. We will go ahead and remove them. You're going to pay us more. Why do you pay more? You pay more because they actually rely on the ad revenue from, you know, from people buying spots to do their commercials and to put their trailers and all of that. Go ahead, Joanna. Did you raise your hand?
It's a what's your time worth situation, though. I mean, it's a budget situation for a lot of people, but at that point, it's what's your time worth.
Right. And it goes right back to that value, right? So they're basically saying, yeah, do you value your time, or do you want to sit here and watch all these ads? But if you don't want to watch all these ads, that's fine, but we're going to charge you because we make money off of the ad revenue that we get. Okay, so again, sell benefits, not features. Any questions? Okay. So outside factors that are impacting your pricing. So the stock market, right? The stock market changes all the time. There's like a recession just looming every 5 minutes. But a lot of the stuff that happens in the stock market directly, depending on the industry, but for the most part affects everyone, but it can be industry specific. The stock market has a significant impact on your business. Why? Well, because if the stock market goes up or it goes down or does whatever it does, that would mean that your pricing is now also affected by that, right? So it could mean that the supplies that you were getting, now cost more, right? Or it could mean that they now cost less for you. So the stock market can impact you. The economic climate, right? So that's a recession. That's COVID, right? A lot of businesses, unfortunately, went under because everything shut down, right? There was nobody spending. There was nobody really doing much of anything. If you were a brick and mortar, if you were a business that had an actual shop, you sold baked goods or, you know, whatever it is that that needed you to kind of be very people facing, and it didn't allow for you to kind of take a step away from there, from them, it impacted your business, right? In the beginning, everyone's businesses were impacted. So people to this day that, you know, that we've been working with, clients and things, there are some of them that are still feeling the effects and still trying to pick themselves up and their business up from 4 years ago, right? That was like such a big deal. So making sure that now that we know what could happen, implementing, you know, best practices and coming up with strategies to kind of navigate those waters. Because if it happened once, it can happen again. And I don't say that to scare you guys. It's just the reality, right? It kind of hit all of us like a ton of bricks, and we're like, wait, what do you mean we're closing down? Wait, what do you mean I can't sell? What do you know what I mean? So there's that. Let's see in the chat. Jason, mine was opposite. Oh, interesting. Tell me about that.
Of course,
As I interrupted your chewing.
Yes, as soon as you caught me with a Tootsie Roll in my mouth. So 2019 and 2020, that's when I really started taking my business more serious. And that's also coincided with my sobriety date. And COVID hit. I freaked out. I thought like I was going to lose my ass, kind of like what you're saying, but actually it was complete opposite. Everybody, no one could go anywhere, and everybody was now looking out their windows all the time, and they had a bunch of money because you couldn't go anywhere, no vacations, no, and then other people were collecting checks for shit they weren't even doing. I don't even, what the world was going to, but because they were looking out the windows and everybody was sad, every time I went into somebody's house, I created a new friend. And then not only that, they would tell somebody else and tell, you know what I mean? And it just lit like wildfire. It was great.
Yeah. So, right, in that instance, for you, it was great, right? You were performing your service.
Yeah.
And you didn't even really have to really go in if you didn't need to or whatever it is. So that was a very nice pivot for you. Unfortunately, right, for other people who were either in the food industry or anything like that, or maybe were providing other types of services that were very front facing.
Yeah.
And they needed to have kind of interaction, that didn't go very well for them. But for those who didn't, right, that was actually a very nice pivot. Seasonality. So knowing that if you sell something in the summer and it's very specific to the summer, like ice cream, maybe in the winter, that may not be the case, right? It's probably not going to be booming for you. So thinking of ways to alleviate that impact, right? By maybe introducing a new product that's very specific to winter or something that you can easily whip up. But seasonality does play a role in your pricing. Yes, add-ons, correct. Supply and demand. Again, we saw this with COVID. So if the supply is not there because the demand is so high, right? You're going to end up having to increase your prices because the reality is that it's costing more because there's now this scarcity behind that supply. Okay. Exclusivity, right? We talked about Gucci. We talked about, the luxury brands. There's also like Target, all of these things being exclusive to maybe a group or a demographic or a niche, right? That's going to allow you to say, I'm charging more. Made local. I don't feel like I see this enough with new businesses, but if you make a product, if you're selling a product, or even if you are a service-based product, but if you're making a product, if you're a service-based business, but even if you're making a product, make sure that you are saying, this is made local. These are all local, whatever it is that you make. If you are in the service and you're providing a service, same thing. I am a local business. Why? There's this, not that I wouldn't call it a trend, but there's like this wave of people really moving away or trying to move away from big corporations. And although they will always be there, we're seeing this now more with the younger generation, Gen Z, to your point, Joanna, with Shein and all of that. And Karen mentioned earlier, they're very much about sustainability and not going towards these, fast fashions and big hungry corporations. So when you say, I made this locally, when you say, I am a local business or locally owned business, that just tells that demographic, that tells those people, oh, I can go support them. And that's like a whole community within itself. So make sure that you're always saying, I'm local, my business is local, I'm reinvesting the dollars back into my community, right? That makes a big difference. Go ahead, Joanna. You're muted.
I said that's what's important, that we reinvest right back into our community.
Yes, and that's what's kind of moving and going around. So that's what we want to say, right? Your experience and education. Now, before we dive into this section, when I say education, I don't mean that you have 4 bachelors, 10 masters, a PhD in whatever business it is that you're doing. I definitely don't mean an actual education. Now, if you have that, that's fabulous. That is great. What I mean by education is what you have learned through taking workshops, through hands-on experience, all of the things that you've kind of accumulated throughout your years for whatever business or industry that you're working in or wanting to launch, that is going to be a very big impact on your pricing, or it's going to have a very big impact on your pricing. Because if you are very well versed and knowledgeable and you have all of these things behind you, you can say, compared to them or them, I actually know more because I have the background for it. I have the hands-on experience for it. I've actually dealt with XYZ, okay? And so that you can definitely use to increase your pricing or have some sort of impact on your pricing. And then your location. So your location also plays a big role. So if for whatever reason you are in the middle of Milwaukee or in the middle of Tennessee, chances are that maybe pricing there is not going to be the same as pricing here in Phoenix or in Gilbert, right? So really, not saying that any of you are going to go to Tennessee, but just to kind of give you an idea how much pricing location can impact your pricing, right? In Phoenix, it might be a little bit more, or it might be a little bit less because there's just a saturated market. Whereas in Gilbert, it could be something a little bit more niche because it's like Gilbert has built this like local community suburban vibe or feel. So the pricing there might be completely different, right? So your location plays a role in that. So now this is important. So let's talk about markup examples. So when we talk about markups, we're talking about how much does something actually cost, and then they've taken that product and they've actually increased it by a bunch, and then they pass that cost to the consumer, right? So as much as we hate it, this is something that we have to do in our business. Now we can do this reasonably, ethically, if we choose to, right? Prescription companies, healthcare companies are one of the biggest ones that kind of just do whatever they want, and there's really very little regulation around it. But for example, if it costs $1 to make, right, and you sell it for $2, then you're doing 100% markup, right? So with prescription drugs are about 200% markup, which is not a shocker, right? There's people who have needed medicines and they've needed certain prescriptions to survive. So if we look at like the like diabetic medicines, or if we look at other life-saving things, they're really expensive. Sometimes they're like $400, $500 a dose or a syringe or whatever it is. We have hair products are the most times 300%. Oh my God. Yes, don't even, yes. There's a specific shampoo that I use, and I'm dreading having to go to the store to buy it because of how ridiculously priced it is. So yes.
Pedro, I get it at cost if you'd like me to get it for you. That
Oh
goes
my
for
God, do you really?
Yes,
Oh,
I
that's
get it
right,
all
because you
at
do
cost.
hair.
Yeah.
Good to know.
If anybody wants
Uh,
anything, you can send me a message and I can do that. Because I can't stand people paying full price for it. It makes me so sad.
God, it's terrible. It's terrible. Thank you. Wedding cakes. Does anybody know what the markup is on a wedding cake? Anyone? 70, okay. Anyone else? Well, we are talking for a wedding cake, and these do range, right? Because it depends. Like I can buy like a box of cake mix and make it and then sell it for $10. Yes, you are quite up there, Joanna. The number is 800% markup. Okay. I see JC is like, what? Are you kidding? For cake? What are you talking about? Yes, very expensive to do. When I got married 2 years ago, at our wedding, the cake was included, and I go like this, included, because realistically it's already in the price, but they said it was free. But when we were looking at cakes, like nice cakes, just a simple 2-tier cake, those were like $1,000, like plus, like they were pretty expensive. And it was just for something so simple. So wedding cakes, just weddings in general, you're going to see a massive markup. If you guys are, aware of what weddings cost, the amount of money for a wedding, you could do so much more. So much more with that. Not that I writing those emotions. Not that I regret getting married, but when I look back, I'm like, damn, I could have done so much more. But yes, there is a massive markup on that. Extra cheese. When we go to the restaurant, we're like, yeah, if anybody's gone to Olive Garden or if you've gone to any restaurant and they're like, oh, like, can I get some more Parmesan or can I get whatever? That markup is 250%, right? So they buy a block, which let's just say a block, right, costs $4, depending on the brand, $3, $4 or whatever it is. Well, when they are selling it back to you, right, they're actually they're charging you more or the amount of what that block would be, right? So you're paying more to have like this little side cup of Parmesan cheese when in reality, you could have just gotten the whole thing for the same price, really. Will the Braveheart move and just take her out of the oh my gosh. And then we have Valentine Day roses. Does anybody know the markup on roses for Valentine's? 150% to 2,000%. Okay. Well, not that that's wrong. 150%, right? Typically for like simple Valentine's bouquets, if you go the week after Valentine's, they all just drop in price. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, Valentine's over. Here's this regular price thing, right? If you go a week before, even sometimes, it'll still be cheaper than going on that same day. Dylan, worth every penny. Really? Okay, I mean, all right. If you love, okay, good for you, Bala. All right, that works. I have a hard time spending money on flowers. They just die, and I just see my money kind of die with it. Bottle service has to be the most markup I can think of. Oh, bottle service. Yes. Bottle service. That's really expensive. So those are examples of markups, right? She's just as shocked, right? Yes. So let's talk about setting your price. So we have direct cost and then we have indirect. So direct costs are what it takes to actually make or sell the product or both. So this includes all of the raw material, all of the supplies, all of the packaging, and then the sales staff, okay? Now keep in mind, I said sales staff, right? Or the individuals who are going to be actually hands-on making it. Indirect cost is what it costs to operate your business. So rent, electricity, your phone bill, your marketing. So you hired a marketing person or you just have marketing in place. Insurance, your admin staff. Now, here's the difference between your sales staff and your admin staff, okay? Your sales staff, or the staff that's actually working on creating the actual product or selling it, they have a direct impact on that product or service. When you're talking admin staff, these are the individuals that are responsible for making sure, for example, that the people who are involved with the direct cost are doing their job. Okay, so that's why admin staff is not a direct cost, because they are the ones that are managing all of the other stuff, right? So the rent, the electricity, the phone bill, talking to the individuals who are in charge of selling and making that product. Okay. The other thing is that your price should cover all of your costs. Okay. So when you're saying, I'm going to set my price at X dollars or X amount, that should be including everything: the materials you spend, the packaging, the time, your time, right? Like your salary, all of that stuff needs to be included in that price, right? And so it's a challenge, because sometimes you're like, well, if I include all these things, this price is going to be like, it's gonna have $1 million price tag on it, right? But if we go back to what I was talking about value, we need to convince the customer that there is value in the price that they are paying, right? So how we do that? Sell the benefit, not the feature. And you're going to hear me say that a lot of times. So what I want you guys to do sometime today or whatever it is, or whenever after this class, I want you guys to really start to write down all of your expenses, okay? And what that actually looks like. Like, write down all of your expenses. Make sure that you're including the materials, anything for marketing, any contractors that you may have, or if you pay yourself, everything, okay? For service providers, okay, that time dictates our pricing. So if we go back one, when we, again, this can be applied to both, right? But really, if you're making a product or providing a product, direct cost, indirect costs, this is what it'll look like. For service providers, if you're providing an actual service, your time dictates your pricing. Your education, as I mentioned earlier, doesn't mean that you have a bachelor's degree. It could, but it just means that you have knowledge around that specific topic. Certificates. So if you take any workshops, if you attend anything that signifies, I completed this, right? I'm an expert in this, or I have knowledge around it, that as well. And then your hands-on experience. All of those things combined is going to allow you to increase your price and dictate the price that you set forth. So now let's talk about how we actually charge. So the first thing we need to do is determine our expenses. So this is why I said, after this class, or whenever you have time, I want you guys to go back and actually write down what your expenses are, okay? This is an example, you guys, okay? This does not include things like travel, insurance, taxes, none of that, okay? This is just an example. So we are going to go ahead and use Isaiah Smith, inventory. So inventory is a direct cost, right? So inventory would be $1,000. So this is for the month, $1,000 in inventory. Your supplies, again, direct, that's $300. And when we talk about inventory, Isaiah, I'm going to use you as an example, right? So for Java Fusion, your inventory would be your fruit, your coffee, your sugar, all of that. Your supplies then becomes your cups, your straws, your lid, all of those things, right? Then when we start talking about staff, we're talking about your time. For example, here, it's $2,400 for the month. That's $15 an hour for 40 hours times 4 weeks. That's going to give you the $2,400, right? Your rent is an indirect cost. So this would be like if you had a small test kitchen or a small space to create the product or something to house it, it'd be $800. Your phone and Wi-Fi, things that you will need, right, to take orders or connect to the internet and do all the stuff you do, about $100. So in total, we're looking at $4,600, right, for the month. Okay. Are we all on the same page? I know that's a lot of numbers. So if we're good, okay, cool. I see thumbs up. Great. So to cover that $4,600 in expenses, right, we have to sell enough merchandise from the inventory. So we already figured out that it's $4,600. So now what we need to do is we're going to assume that the total inventory that we have is 1,000 items. So Isaiah, in this case, again, using him as an example, he has 1,000, smoothies, and that's what we have in inventory. Once we have the expenses figured out, we then have to say, okay, what is my break-even point? So if you don't know, the break-even point is that point that you get to when you've reached, when you've covered all of your expenses, right? So your expenses are $4,600. Every time you sell something, that kind of goes back to that expense, and it all then kind of zeroes itself out. So now you've made enough money to cover $4,600 worth, okay? You spend 46, you made 46. That's your break-even point, and that's what we need to figure out. So before we can get to setting that price, right, because we're still figuring out how we're gonna get to our break-even point, if we sell 1,000 smoothies or 1,000 items for $4.60, right? That's going to be 1,000 times $4.60, which gives me 4,600, right? So that number, if I sell 1,000, that's going to give me the coverage I need so that I can break even. Okay. Now, let's say I'm not selling 1,000, right? And I only sell 800. Well, in order for me to still break even at $4,600 for the month, I would have to increase my cost to $575. So that's 800 items times 575. I still get 4,600. Great, I'm covered. I can still cover my monthly expense. Now, if you're selling 500 items, then that would be at $9.20. Right? So 500 times 920, I'm still covering my monthly expense. Now, allows people to leave change for a tip. Yes. So when you're kind of looking at this, right? Like if we go back to here and we're looking at our inventory, our supplies, all of that stuff, right? In terms of what we have, but we're only really selling, right, a certain amount. We want to make sure that we're not overbuying. So that's why when you start the business and you're looking at all of these numbers, it's important to know how much did I actually make this month? How much did I cover? What was left over? Because what you don't want is to, have a ton of product left over, right? And that's how you're going to be able to say, okay, well, I'm not going to do 1,000 anymore. I'm only going to sell 500, and I'm going to sell them at this price. Yeah? Everyone? Okay, cool. All right. So once we've figured all that stuff out, now we start talking profit margin, right? This is what we like to hear. This is where the moolah starts coming in, right? So after we get the expenses, after we do all that stuff, we want to make sure that we're aiming for a 10 to 25% margin. Keep in mind, this all depends on the industry you're in. For example, in the food industry, like a restaurant, that margin is much smaller. We're talking 7 to 10% profit margin. And in some other cases, like more specific in the food industry, it's as low as 3 to 5. Like it's very, very small, which is why a lot of times restaurants have a hard time of staying in business because you really don't see a return until about 2 to 3 years after. So when you're starting in the food industry, you're doing anything in the food industry, you have to be very, very, very conscientious of that spending, right? How much am I spending here? How much am I spending there? Because your profit margins are slim. For every dollar that you're spending, right, in expenses, you want to make sure that you're earning a profit of 10 to 25 cents. So if you're spending $1, you want to make sure that you're making $1.10 or you're making $1.25. Okay, at a minimum. Any questions on this?
I do have a question, Pedro. I don't know if maybe I missed this, but how does profit margin like calculate into like a service-based business? Like I still obviously calculate my expenses, and then like is my break even? I guess I could adjust my break even based on like how many clients I need to get at the price that I have. Or
correct. So you can base it off of that, right? So even though you're service based, you're still going to have a profit margin, and you would still base it off of, right, those expenses, your staff, if you have any, what all that looks like. You'll still come out with the same. You know, for example, like doctors and lawyers, their profit margin is like 30% to 500%. It just depends on how good they are, right? But they factor in all of those other things, such as what does my expenses actually look like. So it's still the same formula. You're just applying it now to service when you're looking at, you know, your education, your time, all that, and then minus expenses.
okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Did that answer it? Good.
No, it definitely does.
Okay. Cool. Go ahead, JC.
I just want to data drill down on the service industry. So taking that a step further, I could technically break down if I had, let's say, 15 computers and I had 12 hours in a day that was open, I would have like 180 play hours. So I could break down my play hours and compare that to my expenses in terms of my play hours or my sort of service or products on how many play hours I have to sell or purchase to break even.
We use a file. Okay, explain that to me one more time.
So for example, I have computers, right? I have 15 computers. I have a 12-hour day. So technically that means I have 180 total hours of computer time that I can sell throughout the day.
Okay, yeah.
So so my break even, I can do my break even based on my expenses and then how much I have to charge basically on a per hour basis almost to then break even.
Yes.
Cool.
Anyone else? Okay. I know it's like numbers are iffy, so if you have questions, please ask. If there's anything that's very specific to what we're talking about, send me an email and we can do like a one-on-one as well. And we can like dive deeper into like your actual numbers and stuff if you have any questions, okay? Alrighty, so continuing on how to charge. So you're gonna sell 1,000 items. Break even was $4.60. That was the first number. You sell your items for $5.75. So your break even price was $4.60 plus your profit margin of 25%. Remember we talked about that profit margin. So selling 1,000 items at your final price of $5.75 gives you a revenue for the month of $5,750. Woo! Yay, right? That's a lot of money. But we're not gonna go spend that money. So now we have to look at, we made $5,700 in revenue, or $5,750 in revenue, minus, right, our expenses, which was $4,600, right? Which now gives me a net profit, so a positive profit of $1,150 after you've already paid yourself, right? Many times what we do as business owners is we say, oh, I haven't paid myself yet, right? Well, your price or the cost of having you on to perform that service or to create that product should have already been included in your price to begin with. It's not just the actual product by itself. You have to also include your time, right? So you've already paid yourself. So now, after everything is said and done, after all the expenses, your business now has made $11.50 in profit. Okay. You then want to take that and you want to put it into a business savings account. Okay. And that's where all the money should get funneled to, right? All that profit should just continue to flow into that business account. That is what you then use, right, to pay taxes or to pay for additional expenses and to kind of give you some working capital there. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay. So going back, what is the first step that we do when we're trying to set our price?
Define our expenses.
Correct. Expenses. Step 2 is to what? Find your break-even point. And then step 3 is to calculate your profit margin. Okay. So those are the steps we want to make sure that we are taking to find each one. So a couple key terms for you guys. Break-even point, we talked about what this is, right? Break-even point is getting to the point where you've met the cost of your expenses. So you spent X, you made X, you didn't make a profit yet, or you didn't make anything additional than that expense number. Bottleneck. Bottleneck is a step in your workflow that takes you the longest time. So driving, delivery, right? All that travel, really building your product. It's kind of where it slows you down the most. And then economies of scale. Economies of scale, the more product you make, the more you save. So think of Costco, right? They allow you to go in and you buy like a gajillion things of toilet paper because who uses that many? Or you go in and you buy like, tons of water, these just containers and containers of water or whatever it is that you need. So think of things like that. How you can apply it to your business. Think of like one-on-one meetings versus class sessions, right? So for example, if we look at this workshop for as an example, this is a class session, right? So instead of me doing this workshop with each and every one of you individually and repeating the same exact hour and a half or 2 hours long workshop, I'm doing it with everyone here, right? So that's called economies of scale. Focus on your sales. So have measurable goals, right? So we keep talking about measurable goals. We've talked about this now last week and the week before and the time before that when we met for the first time. So make sure that you are able to have things that are within reason that you can keep track of, right? So $50 million is great, but we have to have a starting point. And then we have to, once we meet that, let's hit the next one. Keep documentation and record keeping. So make sure that you are staying in tune with what your customers are wanting, right? So if your customers are saying they want this or they don't want that or they like this or they don't like that or whatever it is, make sure that you're, keeping track of that because that's going to determine your sales. If somebody doesn't want something anymore or there's very little interest, then why would you still continue to buy or make that product? It's costing you money, right? They're telling you they want something else. You can bring in something else. You can create something new, but make sure you're keeping track of that so that you can refer back to that. And keeping track of what those monthly expenses look like. So don't just say, oh, it's $4,600. Great. No, keep track of that. In January, I spent 46. In February, I accidentally somehow spent 48. But then in March, I somehow only spent 43, right? You want to make sure you're keeping track of that, because when you do, you'll be able to reference it back. And that's how you're going to start to notice trends, if there are any trends within your industry or the service you're providing. It'll also let you see if there is maybe something where you're spending more on a line item than prior months, and you'll be able to kind of readjust that way, instead of it being December. You're like, holy crap, like I don't know what happened and I have no record of it, right? So it's good to record keep. Focus on retention, right? So focus on your customers, focus on, again, the customer service aspect of it, what they're wanting. Make sure that if they're coming to you with something, is there something else you can offer them as an add-on? Focus on your target market. So if there is something that you're doing that's niche, if there is something that you're doing that's specific, focus on them. Everybody, I know we always think like, well, everybody needs this product or everybody needs this service. No, not everybody needs that, right? We want to focus on the people that actually need it. And by need, I mean are actually going to spend the dollars for it, right? There is something for someone out there. There always is, there always will be. I say this all the time, and I said it before, Manny can literally sell you air in a jar. Like he could literally be like, this is air and this is the benefit of air, or whatever. Somebody will buy it and like there's nothing in it, right? Like there's going to be something for someone out there. You just have to make sure that you are sticking to that target market. And then grow gradually. We all want to grow really quickly and make big bucks, and I 100% understand that. I feel that. I always caution against it. Grow gradually, because what you're doing as you're growing is you're building the foundation for your business. If you don't, what could happen is that there's so much coming in at you at the same time. You have not been able to, for example, hire someone, train someone, add people to the team, create a strategy for marketing, create a strategy for your processes and procedures. And now it's overwhelming, right? That's happened to us in our business, where we actually made the conscious choice a couple years back. We had the opportunity to grow, very quickly and just like explode. And we actually decided not to. And we said, no, thanks. And instead, we have chosen to remain in a state where we are gradually growing. And that actually has been very, very beneficial for us, because we've been able to look at things that maybe we did wrong, or adjust our strategies a bit. We've added people to the team, where they've needed to be added. We've removed people from the team when they've needed to be removed. And that's allowed us to continue to grow the business. So that's what I would like for you guys, is to kind of keep that in mind, to just, take it one step at a time and grow gradually. What if your customers aren't buying from you? Well, you cut the cost, right? So when you look at what the costs are, and this may not apply to everyone, but when you're looking at at your price, they're not buying. Maybe your price is too high compared to the neighboring competitors around you. Now, again, we have to make sure that the cost or the price that we're putting out there has value, right? When people feel like that cost that they're kind of spending on has value, they will 100% pay it, because they're like, oh, this is going to make my life easier, or oh, this is going to XYZ. But we have to basically communicate it effectively to justify that price. If we don't, then that's where we start seeing, people say, well, no, thank you, or no, no, thanks. I'd rather do this or do that or whatever it is. So we have to just communicate it effectively through verbalizing it with them or through our marketing and branding. If customers aren't buying, we maybe increase the price, right? Sometimes our price is too low and people, again, back to perception, they're like, oh, well, this person's too low. So that must mean that the quality is not that great, right? Okay, well, if that's the case, well, let me increase my price and I'll charge you more if you really believe that it's better quality. Now, the hope is that you'll still offer them better quality, right? At that higher price tag, of course. But again, it all goes back to perception and increasing a value. So tomatoes and tomatoes, right? People are like, oh, these are fancy, organic, whatever, but really they came from the same place, right? Tomato to tomato. So there's that. If not, right, if any of those things don't work, maybe think about discontinuing that product or that service and say, you know what, that doesn't work anymore. And that's okay to do. We've actually done that as well. We've reassessed our services every few months or whatever it is, and we sit back and we say, okay, how much have we generated from doing or performing X services? How much of an impact have we created by providing X service? Very little or none or a lot. And then that's how you start to really think, is this worth my time? And does this benefit my business? Or make it a loss leader. So remember last week we talked about how they have like the eggs, they sell the eggs at the back of the store and they're like $2 typically, right? It's a small price to pay, but in the process, you're walking through the bread, you're walking through the bakery, you're walking through sometimes the meat section, you're walking through all of these other aisles that have higher price tags on them. So you're more likely to start pulling things from the shelves as you make your way to grab these, $2 eggs, right? So maybe thinking of putting your service or one of them as a loss leader to generate new clients or new customers. So sometimes it's okay to say, I'm going to lose a small amount because I'm going to gain a lot more this way. We don't always want to do that, but that sometimes does help, right? And then analyze your results. So whatever's working, great. If it's not working, then it's time to kind of go on to the next thing. Don't think though for a second that you're going to implement a strategy or you're going to implement a price and that's just going to be what it's going to be forever. Things change, trends change, the stock market goes up, the stock market goes down, economies collapse, recessions, whatever it is, right? So you're always going to want to look at your expenses, your pricing, your time, and always think about, okay, what am I shifting? What am I moving? And that's just the biggest thing when running a business is it's just a moving, what is it? A game of chess, right? It's just constantly ever changing. And sometimes you're like, damn, can like this just like chill for a minute? Like I just need a moment to breathe. But unfortunately, it just continues to change. For example, right now, right, they're saying that there's like this bird flu thing that's going around. If you guys haven't heard about it, farmers are getting sick with it. So now there's like, oh, another possible, pandemic, but don't worry, we're preparing for it. Well, what's happening? What's happening is that the cost of beef, the cost of dairy is starting to go up because they're doing more testing and they're doing all these things to try to keep us safe, but that's starting to affect, right, restaurants that are in the food service industry or catering and all of these things. So again, how are you pivoting and kind of, how are you adjusting? So analyze your results. It's ever evolving. So that completes class 3. Next week, it'll be class 4, and that's going to be understanding your numbers. This is going to be the profit and loss, this is going to be a very, 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 Joanna, this is going to be a very important class. I have a mentor who recommends allocating cash. Oh, the message just went away. Ooh, okay. I'll read that in a sec. So next week, very important, profit and loss. This is going to really dive into your, the money that you're making, that net profit, the money that you're losing, monthly for the year, etc. So it'll be a very, very good class. And then Blake,
If we're
what is-
talking
I have a
about
mentor.
numbers, if
Yeah,
we're
go
talking
ahead.
about numbers next week, it might be worth going over this next week. But it's basically the gist of it is that my mentor not my Go mentor, but a different mentor had me set up my business checking account to where like I have my main checking account, but then Mountain America Credit Union here in Arizona allows me to have sub accounts for no additional cost. So I have my main checking account, then I have a owner's compensation account, which is where I pay myself from. That's where I make my withdrawals. Then I have my tax sub account. I have an operating expense sub account, and I have a profit or savings sub account. And let's say, like I put in the chat, if Rafe, like a $5,000 job comes through, the money immediately flows through my top checking account. But as soon as it hits that account, I make my allocation. So 50% of that goes into my owner's comp. I transfer 15% into my tax account where I just don't even touch it. I transfer 25% into my operating expense account. And by the end of me allocating my funds, I should have $0 in my income account, which is like the top checking account. That way it just like, I can see how much money I have. I don't just have a $5,000 like big number sitting in my bank account. It's like, no, everything is now allocated out. So I see, where it's supposed to be functioning for the business.
Yeah, no, that's fabulous. That makes perfect sense. And that's something that we will definitely be covering next class as well. So yeah, I like that. Great advice. Before we leave, there was, to your point, Blake, when we were talking about, where was it? Give me one sec. Because you had asked something about applying like pricing to, where's the slide? Applying pricing to your service space. So basically, right, because it's not a product and it's service, you really have to look at, and we kind of agreed, but you have to look at your time that you're spending, all that, or whatever it is. But to give you an example, if you are charging, $100 per recording session, for example, right? If you're doing like $100 recording session, you can charge that. That's fine. That's your base price. But let's just say that you end up going viral and somehow you end up winning, like a Grammy or whatever it is, right? Not to like put pressure on you, but all these amazing things. That $100 no longer is $100. You can now, because of that, right? That's the experience, that's the education, all of that. That's the new, all the traits and all that stuff they've accumulated. You can now charge $200. You can now increase your price because you can say, well, my videos are now going viral. I have won all of these awards. I have gotten all of these accolades, right? So that also plays a factor in your pricing. If you're service-based, right? It's all of those little things that maybe somebody else would be like, but is it really? And you're like, no, it is, because I'm now the expert in it. So that's my price. Take it or leave it. So I just wanted to kind of just bring that up. And well, that concludes our class. So if you guys have any other questions about this, please feel free to ask. If not, there is my email. If you want to do a one-on-one that's perfectly fine. I'd be happy to jump on a one-on-one with you guys to kind of go over anything specific about your business. But yeah, you are welcome, JC, Cindy, Isaiah. Let's see. Oh, go ahead, JC.
Quick question for you, Pedro. Do you folks, I guess, provide assistance with, let's say, some sort of funding gathering where you either know of or can possibly gather lists of funding or angel funding, or maybe certain sources or people who would invest in certain areas that my area be in, or do some sort of presentation service in association with that?
Do you mean if we know of individuals, or
I guess maybe provide a service where you say, hey, for X amount, what we do is we have a list of maybe funding providers in the specific category that your business is in, and we put out and can make some contacts, or with these, we can do some sort of help you build some sort of presentation and help you market them together. Yeah, I'm not sure. Since you are consulting, I'm not sure who you know. So
yeah,
that's sort of out of my place where I need to find some funding sources, but also looking to package everything together. So if I do present it, I have something that I can go and present everything in a nice picture together. So maybe it's either helping with that picture, presenting everything, and or that end result of funding, communication, contact type of thing.
Yeah. So what you're describing there is a pitch deck, and we do those. So we recently, the most recent one we did was for someone who was trying to get their product into Kroger Foods. So we created an entire pitch deck for them, and then they took that and presented it to the executives at Kroger Foods to get that product on the shelves. So yes, that is something that that's part of the service that we do. So we can help you put that together. We'll create it for you. We'll even do like a mock interview or a mock pitch presentation where we will walk you through kind of like what you should say and what you shouldn't say, and allocate time to prepare you to meet with these individuals.
And that costs, so that way I can maybe figure in, since I'm putting together my second scholarship, possibly to roll that in.
Yeah, so that would normally be $125 an hour, but like I mentioned earlier in the class, when you do that, we've decided to do a discount. So you're looking at $25 off of that price, so it would just be $100 an hour.
And is there a certain amount of hours that you guys, you folks, I should say, take that are required to put a pitch deck together, or is it sort of like